Yeah.
See, because it's like you were creating the whole time. Like a lot of the times in those scenarios, had you been on time, you would have missed that.
Yeah.
Car wreck's a pretty tough illustration.
It is, but
I'm right with you. You are creating at every moment in time. You're either recreating the old story or you're creating new.
See, a car accident is an intersection between your old story and someone else's old story.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And so what we know to be true is that there's a lot of people running around living in the old story. A car accident waiting to happen. Whether or not you place yourself in the path of that is your choice, based on your living out of the old story or living in the new story.
Yeah, like for me, I just relate to my motorcycle accident. That's right where I go. You know what I mean? Like, for me, that it doesn't matter whose fault it was. You know what I mean? It was, for me, it was like kind of like that wake up thing in that moment. You know what I mean? Like, I could blame it on the person pulling out in front of me.
But I challenge that thought. I'm about to send you into poo-poo Monday-ville. Crap. That's crap, dude. That's crap.
I wasn't finished, but
it's crap. That's crap. It's like that. You say I wasn't finished. That's where you're starting from. Like, it wasn't a wake-up call for you in that moment. It was the intersection of old story and old story. Cause and effect. I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of details around the accident in itself. Like how you woke up, what you were doing the night before, what you're doing, boom, 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 and being willing to examine all of that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what I was getting at, it was my doing that everything happened the way that it did. You know, like, I could blame that other person, but the reality is it was completely my fault. You know what I mean?
It always is.
That's what I was saying. Like, that's how I can relate to that experience, like, with that story. You know what I mean? Is that it was, you know, like, I created that whole thing. Like, I'm the one that decided to go. I'm the one that, you know what I mean? Like, all of that was my decision. Like, my decision to pass an oncoming car. You know what I mean? Like, those were all my decisions. You know, the wake up for me was like, geez, I could have died really easily, you know, doing whatever I was doing, which was on the way to go pick something up, you know? Like, that was a motive. That was my whole reason for going.
So I got a question for you. A lot of times in life, people attempt to give moments in time an incredible amount of energy in regards to wake up, whatever. And because of the thought process of I could have died there, we carry now that old story every day moving forward, trying to remind ourselves that we could have died from that moment in time, but in reality we're not living any further ahead of it than we were before we had the moment in time, which causes the guilt and the self-talk and all these things, because you know something, like that should have been a wake-up call, but it wasn't.
Not for like drug use, but for driving motorcycles. I didn't drive one after that.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had a life and death moment in time for your drug use, or for riding a motorcycle?
Yeah, that's where I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where I was at. Like, those are my thoughts in those times.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that it's not that though.
I don't know how to follow.
Like, it, wake up call, life and death experience, accidents do not get compartmentalized and labeled how we want them to. They could have been this, but because we did not respond to it, it became subcategory, bump, 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 bump down here, wake up call for this small little area in my life. That's what I mean by not seeing things for what they are. We're trying to make them something that they're not. When really it was just a moment in time where life was out of control. It happened. And it shoulda, coulda, woulda changed life from that moment forward. But it didn't. And so I just go, because what I know is that it's not creating life in my life now. I just let it go as a part of my history, rather than something I go back to identify with in the now, that has no power other than the power in which you've given it. Because truth be told is that we could all die every single day, everywhere we go, every moment. I mean, that's the truth. So that moment has no more power than all of these moments if we're willing to see the moment for what it is. Both of them.
Yeah, I agree.
And the power to change is in this moment. It's not in that moment, and it's not because of that moment. And a lot of people sit around beating themselves up because they know they should be doing different. They know their life should be in a different place because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. But it's not. And every time we go back to that place and we drag that son of a bitch all the way up into the current moment, the now, we are recreating the old story. We're giving it CPR. It's like, dude, that thing's been gone for however many years. You're not going to bring it back to life like the way you want to. See, I am tuned in to identifying the same old story.
Are you implying that I'm bringing back the story to have some kind of gratification from telling it or something?
I don't imply anything, first of all. So why would you even make that statement? I speak authentically, do I not?
Yeah.
So I don't imply anything.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it was like fairly indirect.
See, but I disagree. Based on my perspective, it sounds really direct, like it's really connected.
Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, typically when you talk to me, like, you know, this is your old story and this is what's being brought up. That's what that's all.
Right, I wasn't implying, I am just saying this is what it sounds like. This is what it looks like. This is what it smells like. This is what it tastes like. where I am, my current place. And you're like, yeah, no, well, you know, it's life wake-up call, but, you know, just for addiction or for riding motorcycles, not for anything else in my life.
I mean, it should have been a wake-up call for everything, but...
So it wasn't what you said. That's just how you've labeled it.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I've, you know, labeled it as something that it wasn't. It was something I swept right under the rug and kept carrying on about in my life.
Now we're accepting it.
You know what I mean?
And being with it.
Yeah, all I was trying to do was just relate an experience of an accident with that, and that's what brought up this,
so
which is a good thing.
What I'm saying is that how often do you do that in life? In your daily communication with yourself and people around you, trying to bring something back to this current moment to make it relatable when it's not relatable.
Yeah, no, I see that.
And all it does is it forces us into this place of reliving the old story.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
That's all I was doing in my confrontational, in-your-face way.
No, it was cool. Like, I appreciate it. You know, I was just asking because I wasn't like, you know, I was unclear, so I just wanted to make myself clear, and I totally get it, dude. That's awesome. You know, I, again, you know, tried to relate to something that wasn't relevant, you know, had this thing that was much larger in my mind over here, when the reality is I swept it under the rug like nothing happened. You know what I mean? And continued about my business, pretending and telling everybody around me that this was a huge thing for me in my life. And man, I could have died. And the reality was I was still shooting up dope and overdosed after that period of time. So the value of myself after that moment was probably worse than it was before then. So for me to say that this one thing was such a great, monumental, life-changing experience was just bullshit.
And that's that's where I wanted to bring you, right there. And so now we see what is, and then we go, letting that thing go now.
For sure.
Putting that thing out to pasture. And every time I ever bring it up again, that's an indicator that I'm doing the same thing. That's kind of like where I'm at with this writing exercise that I'm going through. It's like it's forcing me to see all of it in a new light, and not saying, well, you know, my parents were divorced twice, were married twice, separated 6 times, I went to 20-umpting schools before I dropped out of high school. The same old bullshit. Those are all the reasons, right, of how I ended up in that moment in time. Okay, but it doesn't allow me to go forward if I'm always going back there, bringing that place up to justify my actions in this current moment. It means that I haven't accepted them completely, or I'm in a new position now, which gives me the ability to see things in a different way, examine them in a new way, not just label them, use the same labels I labeled them 10 years ago, file them, subcategory, over here, and there is no commitment in it. It's like, yeah. And then you start becoming aware of how often you do that every day.